Party people in a place to be. What's going on? It's me. And Young Rock debuted some time ago, about a week or so ago. Now, so everybody knows the premise of this, or if you don't, here's a quick synopsis. We're gonna see three different points in The Rock's life, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's life. Really four. His early childhood, his mid-teenage years, and from the point where he joins the Miami Hurricanes football team. This is a comedy series. Actors are playing different people in Rock's life. Rock is purporting to spoilers. Rock is telling the story. So we see four different points in Rock's life, and it tells the story of the Rock's life here. I'll do non-spoilers first. This first episode seemed very, very fast, and the premise of it, from telling really four different stories at the same time, the current story of Rock telling the story, serving as the narrator, is acting like a fourth story, if not a third and a half story. Really, for a 22-minute sitcom, is a lot of stories to tell in a very short amount of time. And this first episode suffers from that. You don't get enough of, like, it all seems like a trailer. It all seems like a 22-minute trailer for the rest of the series, which I suppose is what a pilot is supposed to be, but it's hard to get invested in this representation of these real life people, which, we'll call characters from here on out, in that short amount of time, because you do have the narration portion, which eats up another portion of the time. So really, you're talking about 5 minutes each for a 22-minute thing. That's where it suffers. Now, it's a comedy, so it can't be 44 minutes, because then it has a tendency to wear out its welcome. And you want it to be, with comedies, you want it to be a little bit pithy. A friend of mine, was like, "Oh, it suffered because it was too short." And I understand what he means by that, but as a comedy, you got to keep it within that typical range. If you go too far out, then you're just making a movie, and that's a completely different ball of wax. So 22-minute comedy, good, but it's hard to get really invested in anybody from the standpoint of investment in these characters. The couple of standouts in terms of their acting and in terms of your ability to actually connect with them on some level, Rock's mom and mid-teenage Rock. His story seems to be a bit more fleshed out. I think they ate a little bit more off of young Rock's story for mid Rock's story. His seems a bit more fleshed out, at least in this episode. And of the three Rocks, it's easier. Yeah, I was like, oh, I kind of see where this portion of the Rock was coming from. Actually, I think they ate more off of the Miami Hurricane Rock. But by far, his mother is the easiest one to connect with in this particular episode, because her actress really portrays that role as loving, as caring, as this figure in Rock's life, the strong figure in Rock's life, with a small amount really in terms of time to work with. So she's the easiest one to figure out in terms of that. In terms of if I will come back for another episode, I kind of feel like I have to, because we don't get a whole lot from this particular episode itself. So the more they flesh out, probably the better it'll be. I can't give it a rating because, in terms of like $15 or whatever, I'll say that it's fine, I suppose. That's the non-spoiler version. The spoiler version is coming in rather quickly. So I'm going to take a sip. And if you don't want to spoil anything, if you want to go to Peacock and watch it, go on ahead and come back to the timestamp or whatever when I'm done talking about spoilers. That is a terrible concoction I made. Anyway, so this episode tells the story of young Rock. It starts, which is the title. It starts off with the kid Rock watching Rocky Johnson have a match against a Samoan in Hawaii in '82, and we get to see different wrestlers show up, the versions of the wrestlers in here: Junkyard Dog, Andre the Giant, Samoans, Rocky's grandmother, etc., etc. Um, and he's has got stars in his eyes looking up to his dad because he loves his dad. And early on, it does kind of tell a little bit of the story of a wrestler, not even necessarily on the road, but um, in that, in the end, he promises the world to his son, or traveling anybody, promises the world to his son, promises we're going to go over to get paid real quick. And Dewey was what they call him. You'll get ice cream when we're done. And instead, he's like, oh, you'll have ice cream for breakfast. I'm going to go do some things with the boys. Right. So you see that kind of, you get a little glimpse of that tension between Rocky Johnson and Rock's mom, and the sort of disconnect between father and performing father and his son on that kind of thing. You hear the phrase "working the gimmick." They leave in a Cadillac only to go to a motel and stay for the night because he's living the gimmick, but they can only afford the car and not necessarily a spacious place to live. Then we fast forward to teenage Rock. He's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He's stealing shit. He steals or he buys a car for $103. Now, if you've seen Rock's Instagram, you've heard this story before, or even like probably if you've read the books. I haven't read his book, but I've heard different shoot interviews with him and stuff like that. You've heard some of the, if you're a wrestling fan, you've heard some of these stories before. This is an amalgamation of a story where Harvey Whippleman, of all people, help him buy his first car, and there's a bum in the back seat of the car that he's buying it from. This is so they just a take off of that. They just kind of switched off the timeline, it seems, and got rid of Harvey Whippleman. He's got a high school friend with him in high school, and he's bigger than everybody, and they think he's a 21 Jump Street kid. And then they go to University of Miami, and Rocky Johnson shows up in the locker room before Rock gets there and tells everybody he's going to be hot shit. And then you see an example of Rock's philosophy of be the hardest worker in the room, because they have a chart that shows how many reps somebody did of 225 pounds on the bench press, and he beats it by one. He wants to be the hardest worker in the room. Also, he wants to make up for the fact that he just had to lie to the people in the locker room, and they found him out about it, and they talk shit to him, so he talks a little shit back. But the overarching thing, the reason why I said there's 4 different Rocks is that we actually get to see the Rock, present day Rock. The story behind that is he's running for president in 2032, and he's doing a sit down interview with this guy. You've seen him a whole bunch of different places. Actor, he's been on everything. And he's doing a sit down interview about his life story. I don't imagine we'll be seeing the current day Rock in every episode. Schedule conflicts, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to be sitting down. He's not going to be sitting doing the interview portion of that on every episode, probably to give some more time to different sections of the Rock in the different timelines of the Rock in this endeavor. Probably going to do more voiceover than anything else as the time goes by. That was probably a concoction because somebody, maybe even Rock, was like, "Oh, you see all these narration. Who are they talking to? Let's talk about who they're talking to." Like, okay, fine, but with that, you constrain the amount of time that you have to flesh out the other characters that you want to get over, and this is 3 other versions of the Rock that you want to get over on the show. So that's really the biggest issue with this episode. I'm not going to say the show, it's only 1 episode, but with this particular episode is the time constraint of 22 minutes and 4 different versions of The Rock that you're trying to get over in different aspects of the show. Now, hopefully, as it continues on, we'll see that dwindle down to 3 or 2 or even 1 in different episodes so that we have more time with different versions of The Rock. One thing I will say is that the actor they got for Rock's mom is beautiful, actually. Like, wow, like I can see why Soul Man would go for her. She's slightly unconventional beauty. She's a little bit bigger. She got some hips or whatever, but she's built like she's an island girl. She's a true island girl. She looks like an island girl. She's beautiful on top of that. Like makes sense. Mazel tov to her. I'd love to see her in some more shit. Like, she's fantastic. And like I mentioned, it was easier to connect with her. She seemed to be doing the lion's share of. They seem to give her the lion's share of acting to do. I mean, acting to do in this one. Just whatever the circumstances on that are, I don't know, but they seem to give her the lion's share of the acting in this particular one. Soul Man Rocky Johnson probably has some good stuff in him. The actor that's playing him, he looks, don't hang up on what people look like on this one. In terms of looking like the wrestler counterparts, you'll lose your mind. But he's there's definitely some talent there in the guy playing Rocky Johnson. Again, we just don't get to see too much of it in this episode with the time constraints. So that's going to be the biggest thing to look out for, is how they space these things out, how they get it. It's as a wrestler terminology, it's essentially like they've got an 8-man match and 10 minutes to do it. Like, well, shit, including entrances, because this was basically all entrances. So it's like, well, shit. You can't. There's not much you can get over in this short amount of time, and then just before you get out there, the booker's like 5. Like, fuck you, guy. Anyway, so that's kind of what they have to work with here. I would say I'll probably end up. I'll definitely watch more episodes. I don't know if I'm going to go out of my way to watch them as soon as they drop. I think what might be better is watching them, is backlogging a couple of them and then watching them as they continue on, like watching maybe 2 or 3 in a row so you can get a wider scope of what we're actually working with within the constraints. Because I can see why somebody might, if somebody's watching the traditional way on regular TV via antenna or their cable, why they may not attach to this so quickly, because it's hard to attach to it so quickly. But maybe if you build up a couple episodes to it, then it'll be easier to attach to it. So I'll probably end up watching it, a month from now or so, after 2 or 3 more episodes have piled up, and then be able to give a better critique of the show. I didn't hate it. It was well produced. In terms of the style, it's very NBC. It's very current NBC style in terms of the how they shoot it. Not necessarily the mockumentary style, but some of the other shows that are like that. The humor, again, hard to really, because you're introducing everybody in 4 different timelines. It's hard to really get too much into the humor portion of it. So it's hard to connect with anything. So that's why I say backlog it a couple weeks, then come back to it, and I'll tell you what I think then at some point, in some way, at that point. Party people, I need you to tell me what you thought of Young Rock. And in the immortal words of Rock's mortal enemy, Triple H, tell me what you think down there in the comments section. Like, share, subscribe. Also, How Do We Even Get Here podcast is blowing up the world. That's what we're trying to do, at least. tinyurl.com/getHereTube is where you go to find it on YouTube. We are on all major platforms: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all those shits. Just look up How Do We Even Get Here, and you'll find us. We drop a new episode every Thursday. Share this video and all the other videos with everybody else that you love, or even that you hate. Because you know why? Because I'll bring you guys together. I'm your favorite YouTuber. You know it. So just go ahead and spread it to everybody all around the world. Be a super spreader of Surreal 469, huh? How about that? And until next time.
I'm a nice guy, I'm a nice place, with a nice smile on my nice face. Turn your back and I'm making sure my night's straight. And when you're out of town, I'll be making sure your wife's straight.